Hello beautifuls, my name is Bo Yi and I am a mentor for survivors of child sexual abuse. It's a hot summer day here in California, so excuse me, but I'm like in my fitness clothes right now because it's hot. But anyways, if you are new to my channel, welcome. And if you've been enjoying my videos, please remember to subscribe, hit the bell so that you get notified every time I upload a video, and please give it a like if you like these types of videos and you want to see more coming. But anyway, this video is going to be about the long-term effects of childhood sexual abuse, and I'm going to be reading directly from an article which I think was put together brilliantly. There's nothing I really want to add to this or take away from this. I just think it's brilliant. And so I'm going to read some parts of it out loud to you. And if you want, you can follow along. I'll provide a link below in the description so that you can read this entire article by yourself as well if you want to. But gosh, this is absolutely brilliant. And I really want to go over this because a lot of people ask me, Bo Yi, how long does it take to heal from childhood sexual abuse? And the answer is, it's a lifetime process. It really is. It's something to basically have awareness about at all times because we are human. And the thing is, even if we heal, like, let's say technically all the way, let's say that we have, the fact that we're human, it's possible to slip back into old ways easily. You know, it can happen to any of us. And so there's never a point where we can say it's finished, we're done, I'm done healing, there's nothing else for me to do, no other work. We have to constantly stay vigilant because beneath all of this that we see, the physical world, you know, all the emotions we deal with, you know, everything that seems just kind of on the surface, you know, all this external stuff, there's an underlying factor underneath everything that we experience on this planet, and it's the spiritual realm. So the spiritual realm is what drives everything, you know, everything that we experience, everything that we see and hear, and, you know, so the spiritual realm, there is good and there's evil, and evil forces will always want to bring us down and make us hurt and depressed and have anxiety and feel worthless and things like this. So that's why it really is a lifetime thing. It's a lifetime thing to stay vigilant and to make sure we don't slip and go back in our ways. So that's just something to keep in mind, and it's nothing to get depressed over. We are living in a spiritual battle as we speak. You know, as we speak, there are different forces out there, good and evil, and we just have to stay connected to God. And when you stay connected to God, all things are possible, and complete utter healing is possible. But that connection has to stay constant, and you have to strengthen your connection, your relationship with God, in order to, you know, not be swept away by evil and not to be easily tricked by evil, because evil can come at us in very subtle ways. And we cannot see the signs. It's easy to miss sometimes, you know, especially with narcissistic people. You know, they can seem so friendly, but then they'll, like, you know, they have other intentions. And if we're not careful, we can kind of get sucked into toxic relationships with narcissists. And, you know, so there's all these different forces out there. And just, it's so important to stay connected with God. And when you do that, you can definitely heal all the way, you know, and you can definitely stay on a path where you fall less. And when you do fall, you get up a lot faster. Okay, so that's the good news. So I'm going to provide a link to this article below. But I just think this article is so awesome. It's so eye-opening. And it's just good for us survivors to know what some possible long-term effects are of the abuse that we experience, just so that, you know, we're aware and we realize there are things that we're going to have to work on, and not to get bogged down about it, not to get all upset about it, and just know that this is just what it is. And because, you know, we can't really help heal ourselves. We can't really, you know, it's hard to know what tools we need if we don't even know what our issues are. So this journal, like, this journal just spells it out so clearly. Let me just give you a little background info first. This is an article by Vista, and Vista is commissioned by and is the property of American Counseling Association. Okay, and so this is from Article 19. It's titled The Long-Term Effects of Childhood Sexual Abuse, Counseling Implications by Melissa Hall and Joshua Hall. And these people are both Melissa Hall is a counselor, Joshua Hall is a licensed social worker, and both have tons of experience working with at-risk children, adolescents, and their families. So yeah, let's get into it. Childhood sexual abuse. First of all, let's define what it is, okay? Because sometimes people are not very clear on what child sexual abuse is. So there are many forms of childhood sexual abuse. The abuse can involve seduction by a beloved relative, or it can be a violent act committed by a stranger. Sexual abuse can be hard to define because of the many different forms it can take on, the different levels of frequency, the variation of circumstances it can occur within, and the different relationships that it may be associated with. Okay, so let's see. So this is kind of a general definition of it by Maltz. Okay, so this is the definition of sexual abuse. Sexual abuse occurs whenever one person dominates and exploits another by means of sexual activity or suggestion. Okay, and here's another definition. Let's see here. Radican, I think that's how you pronounce this name. Radican defines childhood sexual abuse as any sexual act, overt or covert, between a child and an adult or older child, where the younger child's participation is obtained through seduction or coercion. Irrespective of how childhood sexual abuse is defined, it generally has significant negative and pervasive psychological impact on its victims. All right, so that's important, right? So we just saw that childhood sexual abuse can range in its spectrum, right? Like it can be someone from, a relative of yours could have abused you, to a complete stranger, like super violent act. It can be overt, it can be covert, meaning, they don't give examples here in that definition. But like, for example, something that is like obvious, like physical sexual abuse would be, if someone rapes you, that's definitely sexual abuse. Like if it's an adult, raping a child. But then there's also other forms that are more subtle, like say an adult shows a child pornography, or the adult exposes his or her private parts to a child. That's childhood sexual abuse as well. So childhood sexual abuse doesn't even necessarily have to require touch. So these are just things to keep in mind. But overall, what this article is saying is that when a child does experience childhood sexual abuse, it's very, very traumatizing and has significant negative and pervasive psychological impact. Okay, so let's continue on. The majority of sexual abuse happens in childhood, with incest being the most common form. The impact of childhood sexual abuse varies from person to person and from case to case. Okay, so that's important to know. And then it goes on to say, let's see. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, there's a study here. Okay, a study compared the experiences of women who experienced familial sexual abuse with women who experienced non-familial abuse. They found that women who experienced familial abuse reported higher current levels of depression and anxiety when thinking about the abuse. So if you were abused by someone close to you in your family, most likely you're gonna have more, you're gonna be impacted more by the abuse than someone. But this is not necessarily true across the board. So it's very important to keep in mind that it does say this The impact of childhood sexual abuse varies from person to person and from case to case. So they're just kind of talking generally here from this study, but I just want to make it very clear that it does vary, and there's different types of abuse. So anyway, let's continue on. Yeah, so basically the nature and severity of the abuse may cause more serious impact. Okay. So yeah, many other factors may influence the degree of damage the victim experiences. Other factors may include the perspective of the individual. So like how the individual sees the abuse will definitely influence how bad the impact is on the victim. Okay, so it says other factors may include the perspective of the individual's internal resources, and the individual's level of support. That is so true, right? The more support a survivor has, the faster she or he can heal. This is so true. Yeah, I just talked about this. Although not all forms of childhood sexual abuse include direct touch, it is important for therapists to understand that childhood sexual abuse can take on many different forms that still exploit the victim sexually and cause harm. The perpetrator may exploit the child by introducing them to pornography, prematurely assaulting them through the internet, or manipulating them into taking pornographic photos. Yeah, so those are some of the things that happened to me before I was molested and raped. So I experienced many different forms of child sexual abuse. Not all of them, but I do understand that as well, that part, or that kind of abuse. Childhood sexual abuse infringes on the basic rights of human beings. Children should be able to have sexual experiences at the appropriate developmental time and within their control and choice. The nature and dynamics of sexual abuse and sexually abusive relationships are often traumatic. When sexual abuse occurs in childhood, it can hinder normal social growth and may be a cause of many different psychosocial problems. Okay, so now so that was more like definitions of childhood sexual abuse. So now the next section of this paper will review literature and research concerning these long-term effects of childhood sexual abuse. Okay, so here we go. It's 13 minutes and now we're going to dive into the meat of this article, okay, this paper. So childhood sexual abuse has been correlated with higher levels of depression, guilt, shame, self-blame, eating disorders, somatic concerns, anxiety, dissociative patterns, repression, denial, sexual problems, and relationship problems. So as you can see, a whole host of problems, lots and lots of problems. So it does take time to, kind of work through all of this, to heal from all of this. But the good news is, again, with God, all things are possible. All things are possible, including healing from all of this. Everything I just listed, totally possible to heal from all of this. So now it's going to break it down and talk about each thing it just listed. So depression. Depression has been found to be the most common long-term symptom among survivors. Survivors may have difficulty in externalizing the abuse, thus thinking negatively about themselves. After years of negative self-thoughts, survivors have feelings of worthlessness and avoid others because they believe they have nothing to offer. Radican describes the symptoms of childhood sexual abuse survivors' depression to be feeling down most of the time, having suicidal ideation, having disturbed sleeping patterns, and having disturbed eating patterns. Okay, so yeah, that's so true. I see, I experienced depression, deep depression, suicidal thoughts, all of that, for a long time. Worthlessness, absolutely, just feeling utterly worthless. I remember when I had suicidal thoughts, I just remembered thinking, gosh, I don't even know why I'm on this planet. I don't even deserve to take space on this planet because I have nothing to offer. I just felt bad for even breathing. I felt like for me to breathe would be taking up, you know, the air that other people could breathe. Like, I don't deserve to even breathe to, I mean, like, that's how far down my thoughts went. I really felt worthless, like totally worthless. Okay, so next, survivors often experience guilt, shame, and self-blame. It has been shown that survivors frequently take personal responsibility for the abuse. When the abuse is done by an esteemed, trusted adult, it may be hard for the children to view the perpetrator in a negative light, thus leaving them incapable of seeing what happened as not their fault. Survivors often blame themselves and internalize negative messages about themselves. Survivors tend to display more self-destructive behaviors and experience more suicidal ideation than those who have not been abused. Okay, next. So next is going to go into body issues and eating disorders, which I talked about a little bit in one of my most recent videos. Anyway, body issues and eating disorders have been cited as a long-term effect of childhood sexual abuse. Bradekin describes the symptoms of childhood sexual abuse. Sorry, I lost my spot. Bradekin describes the symptoms of child sexual abuse survivors' body image problems to be related to feeling dirty or ugly, dissatisfaction with body or appearance, eating disorders, and obesity. Survivors' distress may also result in somatic concerns. A study found that women survivors reported significantly more medical concerns than did people who have not experienced sexual abuse. The most frequent medial complaint was, that makes sense, medial, like in the middle. The most medial complaint was pelvic pain. I can't speak right now. Sorry, let me start over. The most frequent medial complaint was pelvic pain. Somatization symptoms among survivors are often related to pelvic pain, gastrointestinal problems, headaches, and difficulty swallowing. That's interesting. So survivors, often have a lot more health issues, That makes sense, because when we don't think well of ourselves, we have a lot of negative thoughts. That's definitely going to affect our bodies. Our immune system is going to be weaker. We're going to just not be as strong physically, and then we're going to be more susceptible to getting, having pain, having issues, health problems, So that's all related. I never had like pelvic pain, but I used to have something in my tailbone. Like, it used to hurt for maybe like 10 years. I always had pain down there. So maybe, maybe that is considered pelvic pain, because that's like in the pelvic region. So that's interesting. So I don't have any more pain there anymore. But that's interesting. I used to have difficulty swallowing as well. I never was diagnosed with having an eating disorder, but I used to be a very extreme vegan, and I would feel a lot of shame and be so mean to myself, because once in a while I'll get so hungry and sneak a bit of cheese or something, and then I just feel so bad about myself and just shame myself over and over and over and over and over. And I used to think I was ugly, super, super ugly. I thought I was always the ugliest girl in school. I always thought, feeling dirty. I totally felt dirty. There was a time when I used to take 3 showers a day because I felt so dirty. And I felt like there was nothing I could do about it. I just felt gross and dirty. Okay, and next, stress and anxiety. Stress and anxiety are often long-term effects of childhood sexual abuse. Childhood sexual abuse can be frightening and cause stress long after the experience or experiences have ceased. Oh my gosh, I can attest to this. Many times, survivors experience chronic anxiety, tension, anxiety attacks, and phobias. A study compared the post-traumatic stress symptoms in Vietnam veterans and adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse. The study revealed that childhood sexual abuse is traumatizing and can result in symptoms comparable to symptoms from war-related trauma. So this I've read a lot about, but it's interesting. Survivors of child sexual abuse, the trauma that they experience, the impact, the symptoms that they have are, very similar to war-related trauma. That's huge. So that kind of puts things into perspective, you know, like the trauma that we experience is not to be taken lightly whatsoever. It's basically like super, super, super traumatic. And there's going to be a lot of things that we're going to have to work through, and it's okay. With God, all things are possible. All right, this next part. Okay, some survivors, dissociation. Okay, so some survivors may have dissociated to protect themselves from experiencing the sexual abuse. As adults, they may still use this coping mechanism when they feel unsafe or threatened. Dissociation for survivors of childhood sexual abuse may include feelings of confusion, feelings of disorientation, nightmares, flashbacks, and difficulty experiencing feelings. Denial and repression of sexual abuse is believed by some to be a long-term effect of childhood sexual abuse. Excuse me. Symptoms may include experiencing amnesia concerning parts of their childhood, negating the effects and impact of sexual abuse, and feeling that they should forget about the abuse. Whether or not survivors can forget past childhood sexual abuse experiences and later recover those memories is a controversial topic. Some therapists believe that sexual abuse can cause enough trauma that the victim forgets or represses the experience as a coping mechanism. Others believe that recovered memories are false and that the client is led to create them. Okay, so anyway, back to dissociation. Yeah, difficulty experiencing feelings, flashbacks, nightmares, confusion. Gosh, yeah, I totally went through all of that. I still get flashbacks here and there, nightmares here and there. You know, it's just one of those things that I'm not sure how long it would take for all of that to go away completely. Maybe it won't go away completely, but at the same time, when I'm connected to God, I still have peace. You know, I still have peace, and that is so awesome. And that's all I can ask for, to have complete peace in my heart and my soul and and everything. You know, like just having that peace. And so when we talk about tools, you know, like read this book or see that therapist or breathe or take a walk, these are tools that can help you heal, but there's no other tool than staying connected to God, because that's like the fastest way to like have peace, like right now, like instant peace. Everything else can lead you to feeling better, but nothing's gonna really give you that utter peace, like you're safe, like totally protected, totally loved, totally comforted, like God can provide for you. All right, so next, survivors of child sexual abuse may experience difficulty in establishing interpersonal relationships. Wait, hold on, let me go back. Oh my gosh, this is so crazy, because I wanted to go back on what it talked about earlier. Symptoms may include experiencing amnesia. So that was kind of a good example. A lot of survivors can have very bad memories. I know I experience that too sometimes. And it's just like the body's like natural protective mechanism, because in order to survive the abuse, like we had to like be in denial while it was happening, after it was happening, so that we could just survive and live life and function. However, this oftentimes carries into our adulthood, and we continue to be forgetful and not remember things, and it can be very frustrating. I remember for me, it was very sad, because I realized not only would I forget, you know, the bad things, but I would also forget good memories all the time. And like my friends, they sometimes would say like, Boyi, remember that one time we went to the park and we like went on the swing for 10 minutes and we were laughing hysterically? And I would just say, no, I don't remember that whatsoever. And that would cause me so much sadness, because I wanted to remember the good times, but sometimes I couldn't. And so, yep, amnesia is definitely a symptom. Okay, next. Okay, so survivors of child sexual abuse may experience difficulty in establishing interpersonal relationships. Symptoms correlated with childhood sexual abuse may hinder the development and growth of relationships. Yeah. Common relationship difficulties that survivors may experience are difficulties with trust, fear of intimacy, fear of being different or weird, difficulty establishing interpersonal boundaries, that's huge, passive behaviors, and getting involved in abusive relationships. So that's totally common. Like, I would say pretty much almost all the survivors I've ever talked with, they've all gotten into very abusive relationships after being abused because that's what they're used to. That's what they think they deserve on a subconscious level, at least. So all of that, so common, very common symptoms. Yes, let's continue on. Okay, so a couple more researchers, Fenner, Callahan, and Hilton examined the relationship between a person's ability to adjust to an intimate relationship, depression, and level of severity of childhood abuse. Their study revealed that as the severity of abuse increased, the scores measuring the ability to adjust to intimate relationships decreased. Well, I think that's common sense. So sexual abuse often is initiated by someone the child loves and trusts, which breaks trust and may result in the child believing that people they love will hurt them. And so yeah, that's why we have trust issues. And it's when we're aware that it does stem from our past, it can help us heal faster. Because it's going to help us become more aware of why we have trust issues. Okay, so next. Okay, Kessler and I'm going to butcher that name. Bashik? Oh gosh, I don't even know. It's like in a different language. Found a significant relationship between women who were sexually abused in childhood and adult victimization. So again, just talked about this. Pretty much all the survivors I know I've ever spoken with, if they were abused, in their childhood, they oftentimes, I would say like 100% of the time, end up getting into abusive relationships. This is very common. All right, the next topic, sexual difficulties. So many survivors experience sexual difficulties. The long-term effects of the abuse that the survivor experiences, such as depression and dissociative patterns, affect the survivor's sexual functioning. Makes sense. So Maltz gives a list of the top 10 sexual symptoms that often result from experiences of sexual abuse: avoiding, fearing, lacking interest in sex, approaching sex as an obligation, experiencing negative feelings such as anger, disgust, or guilt with touch, having difficulty becoming aroused or feeling sensation, feeling emotionally distant or not present during sex, experiencing intrusive or disturbing sexual thoughts and images, engaging in compulsive or inappropriate sexual behaviors, experiencing difficulty establishing or maintaining an intimate relationship, experiencing vaginal pain or orgasmic difficulties, and experiencing so that's all for women. And then now for men, and experiencing erectile, ejaculatory, or orgasmic difficulties for men. Okay, a study done on the prevalence and predictors of sexual dysfunction in the United States revealed that victims of sexual abuse experience sexual problems more than the general population. Well, yeah, of course, but it's good to have these studies, right? They found that male victims of childhood sexual abuse were more likely to experience erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, and low sexual desire. And they found that women were more likely to have arousal disorders. So yeah, I can attest to all of that. Yeah, I had a lot of issues with all of that myself. So yeah, that's kind of personal because it's gonna go into like my sexual life, but we'll just put it this way. Me being with my husband now, such a loving, supportive man in my healing journey, has helped me come to a healthy place now in my sexual life and in my way of experiencing intimacy. Like I now have no issues, let's just put it that way. I now have no issues feeling my feelings, physically, sexually with my husband because, well, I guess I've healed from this. It took a lot of years, I've been married now 9 months, and it's been such a beautiful journey. He's been so supportive because, you know, after getting married, a whole host of triggers will come about. I'm just gonna tell you right now. They will just come about because you're entering a relationship that requires a much higher level of intimacy and trust, vulnerability. And so when that happens, triggers will just naturally come up. And when you have a loving husband or a loving wife, it's gonna just help you heal so much, so much more effectively, more gracefully. But if you end up with someone who's abusive, it's just going to really mess you up even further. And so that's why I really recommend, you know, if you're not with a partner now and you are survivors of child sexual abuse, I do recommend that you get all the help that you need, whether it's in the form of therapists, mentors, coaches, 12-step groups, books, but more than anything, God. Being connected to God, that's the number one thing. And then also utilizing all these other tools, because if you don't heal to the extent of like being able to recognize if someone's abusive or healthy and this and that, you're going to end up attracting a very abusive partner or a very toxic partner. And if you marry this person, your life is going to go downhill. It's going to be absolutely terrible and no fun. And it's going to be almost impossible to heal, because in order to heal, you have to feel safe. You have to be in a safe environment. You have to be surrounded by other safe people who are supportive and loving. Otherwise, you will have a very hard time healing. I'll just put it that way. All right, so okay, there's one more paragraph here. It is important to point out that although research has shown there to be significant relationships between long-term effect variables and childhood sexual abuse, each victim's responses and experiences will not be the same. Although it is often viewed as a traumatic experience, there is no single symptom among all survivors, and it is important for clinicians to focus on the individual needs of the client. So again, very important just to know that, you know, even though I listed all these symptoms that a lot of survivors have, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have all of them. You might have some and then not others, and then another survivor might have like completely different symptoms as you. And what it's saying here is that is to be expected, because everyone is different and people process their trauma differently, and that trauma affects people differently because we're different. So then the article goes on more for like therapists and clinicians, like how to, like what to keep in mind when they work with their clients and patients. And so yeah, so that's an amazing article, and I hope that helps to shed light on, you know, very common long-term effects of childhood sexual abuse, so that you don't feel like weird or like, yeah, so you don't feel like unusual, and you don't feel like you're the only one experiencing some of these symptoms, because you're not. I experienced like most of those symptoms I just read out loud to you. I would say like 90%, if not more. I would have to go back and kind of tick off which ones I experienced, but gosh, I definitely experienced symptoms in every single category, and most of them. So I would say like 90 to 95%, okay? And so if I am where I'm at now, it is definitely possible for you to also heal to this point. And again, like I said at the beginning of my video, if you're interested in working with me, you know what, go ahead and just go to my website, IBelieveInLoveAgain.com, and apply. And if you qualify at least to be a potential mentee of mine, which means you take responsibility for the current actions in your life, that's huge. If you don't, unfortunately, I cannot work with you. But if you are someone who takes responsibility for your life, your actions today, as an adult today, then I can work with you, and I can give you that complimentary free session over Skype if you have Skype. Otherwise, we can just do it over the phone. That's fine as well. And I'd love to get to know you, get to know what your goals are, and give you some tools to help speed along your healing process. All right? So have a beautiful week. I love you all. God bless you. Talk with you soon. Mwah.